Speaking of DeQuell Jackson, I love this guy as a player. A couple of years ago, I helped out with the Browns Players Media Workshop, and the thing that struck me from it was, wow, DeQuell Jackson's going to be a media star. This guy is smart. He knows football. DeQuell, welcome to the Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show. I'm glad to see you again, and more specifically, I'm glad you're on our show.
Look, he got a nice mic too.
Yeah, you know,
you got the pro setup.
Hey, it's great to be here. Great to talk Browns football. And Jay, it's always great to see you, brother.
Hey, listen, I want to dive in right away with your thoughts of the whole schedule game, and I want your honest answer. Did you ever do that as a player? Do guys do that in the locker room? Do they look at the schedule and do this insane ritual that we do?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And for the guys who tell you they don't, they're not telling you the truth, because you look at all the teams that, whether you were on the team before, you look at all the teams that you have played for, when's your revenge game? When are you going to get back at these guys? So absolutely. A part of the schedule is part of planning. You look at when the bye week happens, because you're trying to set up a small trip if you can, and in your mind as a player, you're computing, okay, which games are the must-haves, which games are going to be the toughest, and you kind of formulate what we're doing now is talking about a schedule. So absolutely, players do it all the time.
Did you play the game with this year's schedule? What are the Browns?
Oh, yeah. So I went back and forth. This was tough. So with a healthy Deshaun Watson, barring he's going to be playing for his reputation, playing for his livelihood, I put him at 11-6.
Oh,
11-6. The first, reasonable, right?
Yeah.
So the first 4 weeks, I feel like they should be able to handle the Panthers, the Jets, the Falcons, Steelers. But right before the bye week, that's when the schedule gets tough. And I look at what Deshaun brings, right? Okay, we know what he can do with his arm strength, with his leg talent. But you look at that two-headed monster you have in your backfield. How's the ball going to be, shared between Kareem Hunt and Nick Chubb? So I feel like that's going to be the rough part of the schedule. After the bye week, they'll catch their footing a bit. But 11-6 to me is reasonable and not overly confident, because, again, they play in the AFC North. It's a crazy talented conference. You have down the road, you have Joe Burrow, who played in the Super Bowl, for Christ's sake, last year. So it's going to be highly competitive within the conference, but the out-of-conference games, in my opinion, will be the difference.
What do you have them going without Deshaun Watson?
Without him, maybe 8, 9, 7, 8 wins.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, and that's saying, okay, without Deshaun Watson, Jacoby Brissett, I've seen a ton of him with Indianapolis Colts. You know what he brings. He's a steady guy. He's sort of a bridge quarterback. He's not your long-term answer, but he is an answer for the short term. But the elephant in the room is Baker Mayfield.
Right.
What do you do with him?
Oh, there you go.
So here's the way I see this kind of playing out. Right now, during this time, it's voluntary. So he's doing the procedural side of things, right? I'm not going to show up. I'll show the organization I'm disrespected. I don't like what's going on. I get it. But I don't see Baker Mayfield missing training camps, practices, games once we get into the fine stage. So he could very well be playing. If he wants out of Cleveland, if he wants to go to have a new home, he needs to play. And so it's a very good chance he could be playing for this team as a starter. But if he beats out Jacoby Brissett.
DeQuell, Brad Sellers here. So
how you doing, Brad?
Welcome to come to the show. But I just was saying that early off camera, right?
Uh-huh.
When you lose money, you got a different mentality here.
Absolutely.
I see him, if I was in Chicago, I see him under center because he's not going to miss that money, right? You're just giving money back away for no reason.
But he's immature. Brad, you and DeQuell are mature.
Listen,
Baker's immature.
You still got to eat.
He still got to eat.
His family still got to eat.
He's fatter than me. He's all right.
Right. His feelings are hurt right now.
His feelings are hurt right now, which, as a former player, you understand that. That's fair. That's a fair emotion. But once you get over things and you start talking to your agent, okay, what could possibly happen? What are the best options for me moving forward? It may not be what he wants, but there's a good likelihood he can end up back in Cleveland. Well, he's still under contract, but he could be playing to get out of Cleveland. So he's got to come to grips with that. Now, it's not the ideal situation, but in order for him to raise his stock, he's going to have to play, whether it's with the Browns or someplace
I agree.
DeQuell, this is G. Bush here. Kind of piggybacking off what Brad said, because I think he hit something a little bit. We've heard the rift. Like, we've heard about the rift between the locker room and whether Baker's lost the locker room, or if that even came to a point, would he be welcomed back into the locker room? You're a defensive guy, right? You know how it is in the locker room. Defensive guys spend most of the time with each other. That's who you see. You don't really see the offensive guys too much because you're just so an individual. So do you believe that if it came down to that as the season goes along and training camp starts, that the defensive guys, the defensive leaders, will open their arms and accept them back into the locker room, or do you think it's too far gone?
Without a doubt, they would open him with welcoming arms, because we all understand as players the formality of the business side. And unfortunately for Baker, he's going through it right now, and it's on display for the entire world to see. So, it's hard not to root for a guy who was a walk-on, who ended up winning a Heisman, #1 overall pick. And for Christ's sake, he 2 years ago, he's only removed for taking the Browns to the playoffs, something that hadn't been done since the Tim Couch days. So I think he will be welcomed in with open arms. Now, there could be some tension. Obviously, there's going to be some clear tension, but from the players' perspective, they'll welcome him back, because all players want to see guys get their money, play well, and achieve all the goals that you set out for your organization. And especially if he can help them win games. If you don't have a Deshaun Watson, then absolutely, I'll be your #1 fan.
So DeQuilla,
Right.
As a longtime player in this league, you understand the benefit of having good veterans on the team. So you've got a young player, a young person in Mayfield who is hurting his feelings. Who is the person in the locker room that can talk sense to the young player to bring him back into the fold and say, let me understand, you want to leave here, the way that you leave here is come in here, do your job,
Right.
show other people that you can play at a high level. That gives you an
Right.
avenue out of here. Who is that person on the Browns team?
Currently, right now,
Yeah.
man, that's a tough one. It's all about personal relationships that he may have. Someone that's tough to say. It's really tough to say, and I'm probably sure it's from someone that we don't even expect.
It could be a low-level guy.
Maybe it's someone that's not in that building. But you hit a great point. He needs someone to just settle him down a bit. I get it. You can be pissed off. You feel disrespected. I get all of that. But at the end of the day, what do you want? You want to play football, and you want to play football at a high level. I would tell him, I was like, you know what? Take as much time as you need. Let's stay in contact with one another. And if I'm a veteran on that team, I'm telling them, like, listen, this is the business. Unfortunately, quarterbacks typically don't have to – there's no rift like this. They typically take care of quarterbacks early and often. So this is territory that myself and a lot of your other buddies on this team have to deal with on a year out and year in basis. So I would tell them, like, listen, you want to play football. Come back, take as much time as you need, but we need you. You could help us. And if it's not for you, then you got to do what's best for you. But for right now, don't cause any other problems that wouldn't allow you to be welcomed back in this building.
Great insight, obviously, into the locker room from DeQuell. I think in the end, Baker's going to get traded before it comes to this anyway. So
he's a good quarterback. He's a starter in the National Football League. It's just when you're in a situation with Andrew Barrett, when you have a guy as talented as Deshaun Watson floating in the air. Outside of 5 or 6 teams, you have to kick the tires on whether or not, this guy can come help your organization. Now, Baker is a starter in this league. However, Deshaun Watson is a different tier quarterback.
No doubt.
I think all that's true.
And DeQuell, by the way, when DeQuell was playing for the Browns, we used to do a segment on my show called Good, Bad, and Ugly, right? Mm-hmm. And the Browns, as DeQuell knows, unfortunately, pretty much sucked the whole time he was there. And like every week we'd be like, "Oh, who are we doing on good?" I'm like, "Well, we got DeQuell and we got Joe Thomas, and that's about it." Joe Hayden, there was like 3 guys. Yeah, we like every week DeQuell 14 tackles, 16 tackles. I mean, he was putting up those monster numbers, but that had to be so frustrating. I know it was for Joe at times. How frustrating was it? You're playing great football personally, but you just didn't have the talent around you.
Yeah, extremely frustrating. But you know what? Every year you thought. I saw Joe on the show, earlier, and every year you thought was going to be a different year. You were going to take that next step, regardless of what last year's record was. You thought you could win a Super Bowl, and that was the mindset I had, Joe Thomas had, and anyone that I was a leader of that was the mentality that I was going to come in and bust my tail to not be part of the problem, be part of the solution when we turn things around. But it was extremely, extremely, extremely difficult. And early in my career, I didn't know how to handle it. I remember doing a radio show, and I realized quickly I would do a radio show once a week in Cleveland. And I realized after like the 7th or 8th week, I was doing more defending myself and other players than I was talking about the actual game. So I realized quickly, I was like, you got to have a hard shell to play in this city.
Absolutely.
And you got to bring your hard hat to work every single day, because the fans will let you know. And the players who walk into that building, they know if I'm one of the leaders, I'm going to outwork everyone on this team. And that's what we expect of you, regardless of the record.
And the fans loved DeQuell because he brought his hard hat every week
worked.
when other guys didn't.
I tried.
Yeah, no, you did. You did. You brought it every game. We loved watching you play. DeQuell, getting back to the Browns record, your prediction, like I had the lowest prediction on the dais. Even if Deshaun Watson plays, I had them going 10-7. And it's not because I don't think Deshaun Watson's great, because I agree with everybody. I mean, he's one of the, I don't know if he's the 4th best or the 5th best or the 3rd or the 6th, whatever. He's one of the elite quarterbacks in the league. However, as you alluded to earlier, the division is loaded. The whole I don't know if we've seen a better AFC. There are so many great quarterbacks. I don't know that any team in the AFC, because these guys, Brad picked the Browns to win 13 with Deshaun, and I'm like, there's so many good teams. How's anybody going to win 13 this year in the AFC? It's too tough. I don't know.
What comes to mind when you look at, you have to go through a Justin Herbert, you have to go through a Patrick Mahomes, a Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson,
Joe Burrow.
Yeah. You have a ton of top talent at the quarterback position in the AFC. So 13 is bold. I put them right in the middle someplace, because the out of conference game is what it's going to boil down to. Because you're right, the AFC North is very, very strong. Yeah. And other than the Steelers, obviously they don't have uncertainty with in their quarterback room. But listen, this is gonna come down to the very end, like it always does, but even more so because every year now, if Deshaun Watson is able to play, that changes the entire dynamic of how we're going to see this playoff run kind of unfold. So I'm excited to see him in the building during games if he's able to play. It's such a strong conference and such a the out of conference games. You have the Bills, the Bucks. These aren't easy games. So hopefully by then, regardless of who's playing that quarterback position, they have an identity of who they are as a team.
I have them going 13 because I believe elite elicits elite, right? So if you're an elite guy, right, you're supposed to bring everybody else
There's
up.
a lot of elite guys.
But here. There's no different than elite with Pat Ewing, Elijah Wan. When you're in a high atmosphere, those that can go high bring every else on.
And Brad, those teams, as they're assessing their game with the Browns,
Yeah.
they're saying they've got Deshaun Watson now. That's not going to be an easy game.
Of course it's not.
So you've got to get on a roll.
There's a different dynamic.
And I think this schedule, DeQuell, with the easier games on the front end of this schedule, I think this schedule allows them to build that momentum, get some early confidence, have Deshaun fit into this system against some inferior opponents. So when the tougher teams start rolling around, they already have that momentum at their back, and we know how big momentum can be in the NFL.
Yeah, well, Jay, have you talked about how Deshaun Watson will actually fit into what the Browns do offensively? With Baker Mayfield, it was a run-centric type of offense. And so you add Deshaun Watson and his ability to throw the football and create with his arm and his legs. What do you do with those guys?
Right.
So I'm actually, there's a concern there. So you're right. The first part of the season, I think, you try to figure out who your football team is. And as you get to the thick of your schedule, you start to understand, okay, what do you do well and what do you don't do so well? And right now, you have some young studs, some young guys on the outside, pass catchers. You drafted David Bell out of Purdue. So this is going to be very interesting to see this unfold. However, the Browns they're in a great situation. When I was a player there, I always wanted to see that quarterback room and look at guys and know, oh man, we can win with either one of these guys. Right. So it's a great problem to have in the running back room and the quarterback room. It's like, why not? Why not? Some guys may not be able to handle it, but we'll see.
I want to check your pulse on Kevin Stefanski, because he really impressed everybody in year one, coach of the year. I thought his genius credentials took a step back last year, because I watched too many times the Browns have their best player on offense, in my view, on the sidelines in some of the
crushing.
biggest.
Oh my God!
Yeah.
It drove
Yes.
me nuts,
Yes.
DeQuell.
Drove me
Why
nuts, too.
can't we put both these guys on the field at the same time? And am I just a raging fan who's losing sight of reality, or is there something to this?
You've watched a lot of football, and you've forgotten a lot of football that most people know. So yes, it was a problem we all saw. It's like, why are your best players on the sideline in critical moments of the game? What that tells as a player, if I'm seeing that tells me there's something going on here. There's something not quite right. And whether obviously it boils, Kevin Stefanski is the product of that, but you got to figure out a way to get your playmakers the ball. Hell, we got a ton of them. So you got to figure it out. That's why you're in the role that you're in, to figure this out, because that's a great problem to have, and it's a problem that most coaches will love to have. And this year will be telling. Again, you have Deshaun Watson on the roster. If he's able to play, can you utilize and maximize his potential and the team's potential to use these star-studded players? I agree with you wholeheartedly.
All right.
DeQuell, I talk about it a lot. We go to the other side of the football in Joe Woods and his defense. And, I was critical after the Kansas City Chiefs lost a couple years ago in the playoffs. We couldn't get off the field. We 3rd and 14. Right. We let Chad Henne scramble. But I thought Joe Woods came back and did a nice, solid job in terms of, getting his team ready to go, more pieces and parts. When you were a linebacker, did you want to attack, blitz more, be more aggressive, or were you? Because you guys played the 3-4. You guys did a lot of things. You dropped in zone a lot.
We were very vanilla at times. And if I could add to that, because yes, I hate it. As a defensive player, you want to play behind the line of scrimmage. You want to impose your will on a team. And for many years and many coordinators, it's like musical chairs. From a coordinator standpoint, head coach standpoint, so the philosophy would change year in and year out. But what stayed the same was we weren't aggressive on defense. And if you have guys that are capable, that can do it, and you don't maximize that potential, it starts those undercurrent, those rumblings throughout the locker room that, leaders like myself had to put out. We had to put out these fires because we could do a lot more, but we weren't doing it. And it's extremely frustrating as a player not to have that in your blood. You're wired to attack. You're wired to play with this fuel. And when a coordinator doesn't match that, then it causes some problems. And, you do what you can, but, you hopefully your offense can score a ton of points.
DeQuell, you talk, in football, we talk in recent years about the devaluing of the running back position. Like that the league seems – I feel like that's kind of happened with linebacker too. Yep. When I was a kid, right, I'm 50. When I was a kid, Lawrence Taylor and all these – I remember I grew up in New York, all these great Giants linebackers. Like I felt like linebacker as a kid, maybe I'm misremembering, that was like the most important position. The middle linebacker was nothing more important. And now I feel like the middle linebacker's become an afterthought in the last few years. Do you see it that way?
Yeah, when I walked into the league, when I was drafted in the league, I was undersized. And at soaking wet, I was 6'1", 240 pounds. And now you see these guys, they're 6'1", they're converting safeties to linebackers now. Mm-hmm. Now they've completely you're playing defense against a spread offense. And so you've seen, like you mentioned, the running back room just kind of be what it is. And now it's trickled over to the other side of the ball with middle linebackers where you have your rush ins. Those are your big dogs. Those are your pass rushers. But then you have pretty much safeties across the board that are tough enough to play within the box. And as I got to the back end of my career, I started seeing the value in being my size. But what held me back was I wasn't fast like these guys. Jeremiah is a guy on this roster that he was my favorite linebacker coming out of the draft. Well, he was a safety, but the way he had the speed, he had the size, and he has the physical ability to play in the trenches. So, I segue into him. With more reps, I think this guy could be special down the road because he has all the tools that today's game wants you to be as a linebacker.
Yeah, we saw that last year. He can take overtime,
stud.
Which is just incredible.
Yeah.
By the way, Jay, we got to go back for 1 second because these guys showed a picture of DeQuell at an event like where he's being celebrated by the Browns, and his head is shaved. He's looking good in that picture. My God, man.
We always say, look at him. He's pretty.
He's such a good-looking guy. G and I were talking about this the other day. When black guys shave their head, they look good. 95% of black guys look good with a bald head. When white guys, look at him. Yeah. He's a beautiful-looking man. White guys, you know what? When white guys shave their head, we look like idiots.
You look like Kojak.
We're terrible.
Dating myself.
You know what? I knew I was going to. I was getting. Highlighted there, so I spent a lot of days on the Peloton and a lot of days.
It's like before you go to your class reunion. You stop eating and you work out twice a day.
Right. I was on my best diet during that time.
Well, you're going to be a regular on the show, and I'm already thrilled about it because
he's awesome.
You can see he's not afraid to share his opinion. Right. He gave his true thoughts about Kevin Stefanski and not putting the backs on the field at the same time. He talked about some things that he didn't love when he was a player.
Yep.
DeQuell, I think I told you this a couple of years ago, but I love that you're actually putting it into use. The best analysts on television, former players, are the ones that have realized that now they have a new job to do.
That's
the new job is to tell it the way it is. You will be wildly successful in this because you're real, you give your opinion. But what we want to do now is we want to get to know DeQuell Jackson, the guy, your former football player. Yeah. I think the backdrops that got – Tim Couch came on Monday. You talk about a backdrop flex. Bro had like everything behind him. He had everything from TV awards to football awards to basketball awards. So I see the boxing gloves behind you.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Do you throw hands? Like, are you a fight fan? Or tell us all about it.
Yeah. So there's a woman here in the DMV area. I live in the Washington D.C. area. She's in the hall. Her name is Israel Wimp, and she used to train me when I was playing. I used to train how to box, and like most people, you think you know how to box. No. This woman is like barely taller than my table here, and I could barely go 3 rounds, and that was probably about 6 years ago. Now, she comes over, I can go 10 rounds. I love it. It's a great workout, great cardio. But this it's on this side. This glove is actually a Muhammad Ali
That's
sign.
What I thought. I saw the ever have. So, DeQuell, in that vein, who's the one player that you played with in your career that you would not want to throw hands with?
Great question.
Ooh, that's a great question. Oh, you got to give me a second.
Think about it.
So he was an old lineman. He was a left tackle. He was with the St. Louis Rams at the time. Oh my God, I can't think of his name.
Orlando Pace?
No. He was with the Browns. He was with the Browns. Oh my gosh. Big sleeve. He has a tattoo. Ryan Tucker.
Really? Why him?
Yes. Listen, I was a young kid at the time, and he never smiled, and he just melee guys during practice. And I remember one time I got into a scuffle where I may have, touched him when I wasn't supposed to, and he gave me a death stare. And I remember thinking, I'm like, I can't take this dude. Even if I had an army, I couldn't take him. So he always scared the crap out of me. And he was just a tough guy, just old school, one of those old school left tackles that could, when he put his hands on you, you weren't going anywhere but where he wanted you to go. So we ended up becoming really good friends.
DeQuell, you got to promote, my brother. You got to get on here. Tell us about your podcast, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, so I have a podcast called Athletes Unplugged. Pretty much what you guys are giving me this platform to do. So basically we're talking about anything from sports to societal issues. And I got the concept based on, if you ever come to my house in D.C., if you can look behind this chair, I have some whiskey, and I'm a big red wine drinker. And so if you come over the house, I usually have a cigar. We go by the fire pit. I always have my really good, deep conversations with a cigar in my hand or a glass of alcohol. So I had this concept of, you know what? Let me bring the fire pit conversations to the camera, and I'm just having fun with it. We've had some skateboarders on. I've had a Formula 3 race car driver on. Wow. I'm having fun with it, and it's been a really good time.
DeQuell, when you come to Cleveland, or if you have a friend that says, hey, DeQuell, I'm going to Cleveland, give me a restaurant I got to go to or a place I got to hang out with, what's your go-to spot that you advise people to go
to? Fahrenheit.
Yeah, it's good.
Yes, Fahrenheit. That's my guy. I was there last September, and that was the first place I dropped my bags off, and I was at Fahrenheit getting a great meal. And and Rocco was there. Shout out to him. So
Very nice.
Yes.
DeQuil, I will say this. You're a DMV guy, so I'm part DMV. My daughter's a Terp playing for Brenda Freeze for the Lady Terps.
Okay.
So
All right.
So I know Maryland's Loxley is trying to make some headway in the Big Ten here. How do you think he's doing? And how do you think Maryland football is ultimately going to be?
Yeah, given the time, if he gets the time, he's gonna completely change the landscape of Maryland football, because if you're not from this area, you don't realize just how talented DC, Maryland, Virginia athletes are just in this small little radius and pool of players. So if he can dominate the in-state in this DMV area athletes, that team would be a top 10 team in the BCS without a doubt. But Locks has done, he had to take over for, a team that was pretty much needed just a new image. He's from the area. He understands how important Maryland is to the community. Given the time, I think he can really turn this organization around, or that school around.
DeQuell, Marvel, Star Wars, or neither?
Marvel.
Yeah,
Marvel.
that's easy.
You didn't even throw
Marvel.
DC in there?
Yeah.
DC sucks, man. Marvel rules, man. Have you seen the new Doctor Strange movie yet?
I have not, but I'm waiting to see that. I have not. I have seen the new Batman movie. I was a little kind of. It wasn't my favorite. It
The
was
DC movies aren't as good as Marvel.
No, they're not. I'm with you,
Yeah.
Bull. Hey, before we move on to our top 5, which, by the way, we can't wait. We had Joe Thomas on earlier this week, and we did the top 5 cheeses.
You know what? Can I
Go
say
ahead.
something about that?
Yeah.
I saw that clip, and you guys were talking about cheese.
Yeah.
And how dare you guys not mention truffle cheese?
Forgot about that.
He's
Forgot about
He's
that.
coming off the
Cheese.
top rope on the
That's
cheese
good.
debate.
It's
The
1,
Browns
2,
off the
3,
hook with
4,
this thing.
and
They
5.
like
Send it to Mike.
Our producer, Mikey McNuggets, wants to weigh in. Mikey, what do you got?
So we talked to DeQuell yesterday, and he mentioned truffle cheese.
Yeah.
Yes.
I don't make money to order truffle cheese. I don't know what truffle cheese
He
is.
doesn't have truffle cheese money. That's true.
I played 11 years. I had to treat myself. It's truffle cheese.
Yeah, no, that's-
if you
that-
put
I kept-
truffle on anything, I'll pretty much eat it.
I'm surprised that got
I'll
by
say that.
Joe, because Joe is like the foremost expert on cheeses I've ever talked to.
Hey, Brad, when we go down and get them cigars by the pit,
and the
Yeah.
and the whiskey,
We want the truffle
whiskey.
cheese.
truffle
And
with
the
truffle,
whiskey.
put some all on my
Maybe
fries.
some
and-
caviar.
As we on our way to a Maryland women's basketball game,
We just
we'll
pull
stop
up.
at the Quails first.
In this house, we always have truffle cheese in this house.
That's a good way to live. That's a good way to live. So we're going to move to our top 5 in just a second. Before I do, I asked you earlier the former teammate of yours that you just didn't want to rumble with. Who's the funniest teammate you've ever played with?
Oh, man. Antoine Peak, who was my teammate in Cleveland, and there was a guy in Indianapolis. Oh, my gosh. Oh, I can't think of his name right now. But when they spoke, it's like they had this raspy, deep voice. And I just remember they had the best, if they would have a mental error, if we're, in the film study, and it would, obviously they would make a mistake. And if the coach called them, they always had something funny to say. And it would just completely break up the tension in the room. And so Antoine Peak, by far, he leads the shot.
Every
he
team
is
needs a guy like that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, yes.